Salut tout le monde, welcome back after an entire month off. Vive la France! I am officially back to Paris and I am officially back to creating unintentionally Frenchified content and bringing it to you. So these last couple of weeks have been really busy in France, as I'm sure they are in the entire world, because it is le rentrée, which is this back to school concept in France that I'm going to talk about in my video today. But actually, my daughter just is turning 3 this year, so this is the first year that she starts in France school, and I am now officially a parent of a student, or an élève as they call it, and I have to say, compared to daycare, there are a lot of culture shocks when it comes to school in France versus the US, or a lot of differences that were quite shocking for me. And so in today's video, I'm going to talk to you about some of the biggest culture shocks that I had between France and the US when it comes to school. So if you guys are ready, c'est parti! So the first thing that really surprised me about le rentrée in France is that this concept isn't just for kids. You know, in the US, nobody is telling you on the first day of school, like, how was your first day back to work? Because, you know, maybe you weren't on vacation with your kids during the summer as well. But in France, because the entire population, or I'm exaggerating, but a majority of people are off for weeks in August or weeks in July, when you're dropping your kids off for their first days of school, it's also usually your first day back at work after a really long period of vacation. So you're seeing everybody, you're getting back into the rhythm of things. And so people will say to me like, Kate, how was like your rentrée? And they're not talking about Eleanor's rentrée. They're talking about me as a 34-year-old adult. How was your first day back at school? How are at work? How are you feeling? And it's kind of interesting because even if you don't have kids, you definitely like live the atmosphere and the excitement of le rentrée, because it's almost like everybody in France is having those first days back. And even though this really surprised me, what I love about it is it gives you like 2 big moments in the year that are kind of like clean slate, start new. You know, you've got the first of the year in January, but then everybody also has le rentrée in September. I am absolutely that type of person that likes to start out, the first of the year or le rentrée with new objectives, new things I want to put in places, like a clean house. I just kind of want to make it like a good start. So if you're one of those people too, and you've got objectives for back to school for September, and one of those objectives is learning a new language, then Lingoda might be a great opportunity for you because they are actually launching one of their language sprints in September. These are a really great opportunity to either start from scratch and completely learn something new, or really build on a foundation that you already have in a language. Lingoda is the #1 online language learning school, and I've partnered with them for years. And one of the reasons that I have is because I really believe in the value that they have, that there isn't really a shortcut to learning the language. Unfortunately, alert, you have to put in the time, you have to make it a habit, but then you will see the results. So Lingoda's language sprints are a really great idea to fuel that motivation, get you going to the point where it doesn't even feel like work anymore. The language sprints work like this. You basically choose between taking 15 classes a month for 2 months or 30 classes a month for 2 months. And depending on what you sign up for, as long as you attend the number of classes that you signed up for those 60 days, then you get 50% or 100% cash back. So not only is it quite the deal, but on top of that, knowing there's a deal motivates you to keep up with the 60 days, and then it becomes a habit and you just want to continue after the sprint as well. Remember that Lingoda's classes are 24/7 online with a native language speaker, meaning that if you put in the time and you talk and you interact with people in your small groups and with your teacher, you will see results. Completely correlated. So if you think this might be for you, check out, I put all of the details in the YouTube description. You've got the link. You've also got a discount code for your sign up, for your registration. So take advantage, if you're like me, of le rentrée and put in those new objectives in place. So in the US, the rhythm of school isn't decided federally, at least not exactly, meaning that in New York, you might start school in August, and then in the state of Minnesota, maybe you start after Labor Day, which is like beginning of September. And so meaning that some schools might end in May and some schools might finish in June, and you could even have different school schedules being in the same town based on whether you're in a private school, whether you're in a public school. I mean, there's just so much that depends on what exactly your rhythm of school is, when you start, when your vacation is, etc. In France, it's completely the opposite. It is 100% managed at a federal level, meaning that every single person in France, every child in France, so I don't know if this is the right math, but say there's about 60 million French people, and let's imagine half of them, it means 30 million kids are all having their first day of school in France on the same day, which means that there's just like a lot of, as they're saying, like vibe around it and atmosphere, and all the parents who know each other, seeing each other for the first time, the kids are being dropped off again, or you're going for your very first time, and there's just like this buzz in the air about the first day of school. And we make a big deal about the first day of school in the US, but it's on like your own little échelle, you know, your own little bubble, because it's not like something that the entire US is starting their first day of school at that time. This surprised me, and in a positive way. I liked the atmosphere. So the school vacation also really surprised me. Basically in France, they work on kind of a rhythm of 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So basically Eleanor started school in early September, and she's gonna get off 2 weeks at the end of October. Then she's gonna get another 2 weeks off in December around Christmas, another 2 weeks off in February, another 2 weeks off in end of April, beginning of May sometimes, and then she's off for the summer for 2 months, all of July and all of August. And that finishes off her year. Where I grew up in the US, this would be called year-round school, the type of rhythm, or at least it would be closer to that than to the rhythm that I knew. I was way more used to the US in going to school for a much, like without all of these breaks. So in the US, I would we start also around, you know, August, September, and I would get off a bit of time for Thanksgiving. Sometimes it was like 4 days or 5 days for Thanksgiving, definitely a week, maybe a bit more at Christmas. Then we would get off some time in March, a bit of like a spring break, we'd call it, for say like a week, and a day here or there, of course, for like holidays like Easter and April. And then we were out about mid-May from school, and then we had 3.5 months of summer. And this is very much a rhythm that was put in place like a long time ago, when most kids had to help their parents on the farm. So summer months was when you were, you know, plowing, when you were getting all of the vegetables, and so this was what kind of worked then, and they've never changed it. I don't know like which rhythm is best. I think a lot of the studies show that this year-round rhythm is actually easier for the kids to have a lot more of like little breaks in between. All I want to say about it though is that as a parent, I find it stressful having to figure out childcare, like every 6 weeks, who's going to watch my child for 2 weeks? Every 6 weeks, who's available to watch my child? And while we get a lot of vacation in France, a lot, we do not have enough vacation to cover all of their breaks. So it's, you know, this explains why a lot of the population take a huge chunk of their vacation in France in August and July. But it's also, you know, you can't do it all. So you kind of have to, you know, find ways. And I don't know, as a parent, I find this stressful. I'll be interesting to see what you guys, you know, some of you that maybe have more experience or have more knowledge around like the different rhythms you can have at school, what's best. But you know, it seems a lot every 6 weeks to be like, okay, who's watching my kid? So the concept of when you start school is different in France versus the US. It's not a good or bad thing. It was just different, and I wasn't expecting it, because in the US, you need to be the age that you should be. So imagine US, you normally start school at 6. So you need to be 6 on the day you start school, so September 1st or August 15th or whatever it is, or at least around that date. Otherwise, you wait until the following, you know, calendar start of school. So that means that people who have October birthdays, November birthdays, these are the oldest kids in your classes. And in France, it's the opposite. They work on the calendar year. So if 3 is the age that you start school in France. So if you are 3 January in the calendar year, you start school at the Rentrée in September. So my daughter Eleanor is a November baby, so she started school here, even though she's not 3 yet. She started school because she turns 3 this year, and being November, she's not one of the oldest in her classes, she's actually one of the youngest. So school is mandatory, and it's mandatory in France starting from the age of 3, and this is one that I have a little bit of a hard time with. School is free, which I think is absolutely amazing, starting from the age of 3, and I think it does start kids off at a more equal footing, which is really great. What I find a hard time with it is that school is not at 3 like daycare at all. You know, Eleanor was in daycare before. There was one adult for 4 or 5 kids. There was a lot of one-on-one time. There was a lot of, time to really adapt to the child's needs, you know. When we get to school in France, you're in a school setting. So Eleanor is one of 22 kids in her class, and that's not the maximum they could have, but she's got 22 in her class. And there is a teacher, and then there is an assistant in the class to help with things. But there's 2 adults for 22 kids. Eleanor is 2. Like, I have a hard time thinking that during the day she's really getting all of the attention, or her needs are being taken care of in the way that I would want them to be taken care of at that age. I completely understand that she can't have one-on-one attention her whole life, or 1-on-5 attention, but school is mandatory in France. She has to go to school. So it's not really, it doesn't matter what I think, she has to go, but it's not something that I really like. In the US, you stay in daycare, which of course has the inconvenience of it's paying, you have to pay for it, and it's very expensive. But you stay in daycare, and you stay in an environment where you have more adults for the kids until you're the age of 5, when you go on to kindergarten. And that's not how it's done in France. And it's not something that, I've only had a child in school now for, a week and a half, but my first impressions are that it's not exactly the type of environment I would have chosen for her if I had a choice. I was also really shocked about the strictness and the rules that I shouldn't be being in France for so long, but just around school at like her age, at the age of 3, there's already a lot of rules. I mean, the kids need to be potty trained, the kids need to be able to wipe, they should be able to pull up and down their own pants, they should be able to undress themselves and dress themselves back up. They can't miss any school unless they're sick, there's no reason. There's just all of these rules around school that I wasn't expecting either. I mean, Eleanor's not even 3 yet. It's not like Einstein or something. I mean, she's not, she misses a day here and there. Is it really a big deal? And then, all of the pressure on like potty training. I'm sitting here thinking, again, the age of the kids, there are a lot of kids at that age that are not potty trained yet. There are a lot of kids that need help when they're going to the bathroom. And often what the teacher's saying is, there's 22 kids for 2 people. We don't have time to do this stuff with them. And I'm like, okay, but it's mandatory for us to go. But at the same time, you're telling me we don't really have the resources to help the kids that aren't up to this certain mold that you expect them to be at. It's one of my things about French education. It's very strict, and there's always this kind of like frame that they'd like the kids to fit into, and this mold, and if you are even slightly outside of the frame or the mold, it seems to be a very big problem. And at the age that we're talking about here, we're talking about 2 and 3-year-olds, there's a big difference in maturity between a child that was born in January and a child that was born in December. I mean, a full year is a big difference. So I just find there to be way too much pressure, and it seems to be way too strict, when I, obviously from my cultural background, feel like at that age there should be a lot of positivity, a lot of encouragement, and maybe there is a lot of that when I'm not around, but when it comes to the way that we're talking to the parents, it's like, So the final one I'm going to talk about is school timings. I need to actually look at her schedule on a regular basis, because I don't know exactly what time she finishes, what she's actually doing. She starts school every day at 8:20. So I get to, go at 8:20, I get to walk in, drop her off in her classroom. From 8:30 to 11:20, she's at school with her teacher learning things. From 11:20 to 12:15, she's at lunch, eating with all of her friends in the cafeteria. From 12:15 to about 2:15, she goes to the area where they sleep. They've got like a dormitory with lots of little beds where she sleeps for a couple of hours. Then from 2 usually to 4:30, she's back at school with her teacher. And then anything after 4:30 is like snack time and playtime. Everything that's school, so the 8:30 to 11:30 and the 2:30 to 4:30 is mandatory. And then everything else you actually pay on a sliding scale. So for example, we pay for Eleanor's lunch every day about like €5. And I'm not exactly sure how much the snack time is, but that's a little bit less. But the actual school time is completely free. But I think that's interesting that you can, in France, pick your kids up and bring them home for lunch and nap and take them back, because you couldn't do that where I was from. But the actual time that they end school doesn't happen. Like the 2 to 4:30 happens only like twice a week. Then some days of the week she actually finishes at 3. So then it's after school care that starts at 3, not at 4:30. And then on Wednesdays it's only half days. So she has like school from 8:30 to 11:30, and then in the afternoon it's completely just, you know, lunch, nap time, and then full on playtime if you choose to keep your kid there, but you don't have to if you don't work or if you have another like childcare solution. Anyways, my head is spinning, like even just trying to explain it to all of you guys. I can't even do it properly because I just never know like where is she at, what is she doing, what time are we supposed to pick her up. So the school times, when I went to school, it was very much like school starts at, I don't know, 8:30 and you get out at 2:30 every single day, Monday through Friday. Beam. All right, guys, that is the end. I would love to hear all of your thoughts, your comments, your experiences with school in France, or maybe in just a totally another country different from your own. Don't forget to check out in the YouTube description anything about Lingoda. I've got the code there so you can get a discount if you sign up for the Lingoda Sprint. I am happy to be back. I hope you guys enjoyed my very first video of the year of La Rentrée, and I will see you guys all next week. Bisous, bisous!